Welcome to Live from Mars. My name is Alex. You may know me as Mars from TikTok, Instagram, where I post content about pop culture, pop music on Vinyl by Mars. And today's episode is a special one because it marks the fifth and final episode in this mini-series I'm calling My 5 Favorite Albums of 2024. In case you were new to the podcast, over the last few weeks, we have been working through my 5 favorite albums of the year. And each episode, I'm bringing on a special guest to help me dive deep into the world of that album. The other albums that have been covered so far are Sabrina Carpenter's Short and Sweet, Taylor Swift and the Tortured Poets Department, Billie Eilish's Hit Me Hard and Soft, and Charli XCX's Brat. And today's episode is all about Ariana Grande's Eternal Sunshine. 2024 was one of the biggest years for pop music that I can remember, and this was probably the first major release of the year. Looking at my Spotify Wrapped, actually, this was by far my most played album of the year. 4 of my top 5 songs of 2024 are from this album. And I've always been a huge fan of Ariana Grande's music, and this album just really struck a chord with me because of her intense vulnerability, the crafty songwriting, Ariana's knack for producing her own harmonies and music. And the storytelling on the record. Ariana obviously went through a very public divorce. She then went through an even more public new relationship starting up, and you start to get glimmers of it on Eternal Sunshine. Now, today's special guest is another social media music content creator who I've been a fan of personally for a very long time. So I'm really excited to have him on the podcast and for you guys to get to know him a little bit better. His name is Dan Cash. For all of those reasons, I am very excited for today's conversation. And before we dive into the discussion on Eternal Sunshine, make sure you are following the podcast on your favorite podcast provider, Spotify, Apple, Amazon. Your support means the world to me, and I really appreciate all the love that you've been giving the podcast so far. And without any further ado, let's talk Eternal Sunshine. Dan, welcome to Live from Mars.
Thank you for having me on Live from Mars.
I'm so excited to have you. We were talking just before we started, but I still to this day do not know how you ever found my account because I was small. You've been following me for a while, and I don't know how you found me in the best way. I'm so glad you did.
No, I'm glad I found you too. It must have been something Taylor Swift
Definitely
related.
Oh, definitely. And it's funny when I look back because when I first started posting for the first year of creating content on TikTok, I did not show my face or use my voice. So I was like a completely anonymous person just talking about his opinions on music. And I'm sure you found me after that because
I'm
otherwise,
pretty sure. Yeah. No, I don't remember seeing you faceless.
Yeah.
I think I enjoy most is like the in-depth and sincere kind of breakdowns you do.
Yeah.
Because a lot of social media stuff is so exaggerated and so false. And I always feel like with you, it's always genuine, which is quite refreshing. I think that's my biggest draw to you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I had seen your videos pop up on my For You page long before we had followed each other. And eventually when I followed you, it was because like every time that you would post something, it would make me laugh out loud, like actually crack up. And I think when I was doing the Short and Sweet interview, like I'm not somebody who watches comedy movies or comedy TV shows often. Like it takes a lot for me to find something funny. And I don't know what that says about my personality, but I like absolutely think that like your shit is hilarious. And like the role play and the character acting and the situations that you pull up, like it's so innovative and quick and witty.
Thank you very much.
Of course. Well, introduce this episode a little bit further. I've mentioned before that we're going through my 5 favorite albums of 2024. Today we are talking about Ariana Grande's Eternal Sunshine. We are joined by Dan Cash. Dan is a social media star. He has absolutely hysterical videos, like I said, about music, TV, pop culture, movies. He has over 460,000 followers on TikTok, which is huge. Hopefully, doesn't get banned ASAP.
Not again.
It can't deal with that again. But his content just really resonates with so many people, and his bubbly personality is behind it all. So, Dan, welcome to the show. I'm thrilled to talk about this album with you.
That was the loveliest intro I've ever had in my life, I think. So
please. So before we get into Ariana and Eternal Sunshine, I want to give people who may not be as familiar with you and your story a little bit more context. How did you get started creating content on social media, and what has that evolution looked like since?
Yeah, so I decided I think it was 2021, I'm like rare because I let lockdown happen and then I was like, oh, I might go on TikTok now.
I did too. I didn't do my first video until like June 2021. and didn't show my face until like June 2022. So
That's
I feel
crazy.
like
I know. And then I started with, I think it was like my fourth or fifth video was an impression of Snape singing a sea shanty.
Yep.
It went viral, like it got like 5 million views. And I was like, oh, this is addictive and this is fun. And then, I mean, it took ages to build. I think the next thing was One Direction. My biggest thing, I think, that launched a lot of it was I listened to Taylor Swift's albums for the first time. And then I just became kind of more generic pop culture. I did some reactions to Grey's Anatomy. I've delved into various TV shows, films, music, musicians. Yeah, I don't really get it. I meet people. When I went to the Eras tour, I met a lot of people that were saying very nice things. And I was like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't understand why people watch my videos.
It can very easily feel like you're in your own bubble of one doing this, because we all sit behind our iPhone camera and talk to it and put it up online. And like, yes, you see comments and you see people engaging, and then you see all the online stuff. But when you actually meet somebody in person who tells you like, whoa, I really love your content, or this video is great, or you really inspired me to do this, it holds so much more weight, because it's very isolating doing this.
You're holding space with the comments you get, Alex. Is that what you're doing?
Giving you my finger to hold. I don't have a single friend that, like, in my personal life, pre-starting content, that does content really. And now I've been able to meet people through doing this, which is fantastic. But also with music, none of my friends and family are nearly into music as much as I am, maybe a few here and there. And the community that, it comes from posting on social media, and the community that we're both building with our content and our presences online, like, that's the most rewarding thing. Because if someone is in a similar situation to where I was, where like they don't have people to talk about this stuff with, I feel like honored and responsible in a way to give them that community.
Yeah, definitely.
So when I reached out to you to do this mini series, I gave you some options as to the albums we were going to cover, and we landed on Eternal Sunshine for you. My question for you is simple. Why?
Because I think it is one of my favorite albums from this year. Bearing in mind this year has been like crazy for
insane
new pop music. And I feel like, because people would expect me to go on a podcast and talk about the Tortured Poets Department, and for me to just kind of say that is my favorite of the year. Yeah, I thought I'd come in with a secret assassin.
I love it. So to give some background on Eternal Sunshine, the title, it was inspired by the 2004 film Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. This album covers themes of heartbreak, personal growth, and new beginnings. This is Ariana's 7th album, which she recorded in just 3 months, which is wild to me. During the 3-month period when Wicked was on pause due to the writer's strike. And this album is so deeply personal, meticulously produced. Pitchfork said, on Eternal Sunshine, Ariana takes a widely publicized moment of personal upheaval and chisels it into a aha moment of her discography. The New York Times says it's one of Ariana Grande's most meticulously crafted and texturally consistent releases. And Rolling Stone said it's the most mature album of her career and one of the catchiest. So a few layers I want to dive into with the album. One fascinating element to me is that people know that Ariana Grande is a talented person, but when it comes to the actual act of creating music, people don't pay enough attention to how in the weeds she is. She is a producer on every single song on this album. She's not only driving the technical process, but she's also driving, obviously, the creative process.
I didn't realize until recently, actually, about Ariana and how involved she was. And then you see these videos of her layering it and literally doing it herself.
So considering this album draws its title and inspiration from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, the main theme of the movie is that this character goes through a process where you can eliminate memories and you can kind of wipe your mind of the bad stuff to focus just on the good. How do you feel, having listened to this album with it being one of your favorites, that she takes the concept and executes it on the album?
Wow, big question. I think the album overall, like in the words of Adele, is Divorce Babes. And I just think that kind of exposing yourself and your life to the degree that she did in this album. And then it's things like, with the We Can't Be Friends music video, that's very on the nose in terms of wiping your mind. But yeah, I just
I
think
loved it, and I feel like it doesn't get nearly enough attention.
I don't think the album did. This is crazy. This is the crazy thing. Like, we had a big moment
Oh
with
yeah,
Yes and because it was so early in the year, and even some of her biggest fans were like, "This isn't great." And then when she came out with "We Can't Be Friends," everyone suddenly flipped to be like, "This is her best thing ever." Um, and then it felt like it was a kind of over. Era ended because then we had just a constant stream of releases from everyone else, and then Wicked.
the "We Can't Be Friends" video, very on the nose, obviously. And from listening to this is a divorce record, like you said. And what I appreciate about it is that she not only focuses on the divorce, but she's able to showcase her story of healing post it and now into a new relationship. And the album kind of takes you on that journey from start to finish. You have a song like "Bye" that is literally getting in the car, saying goodbye to the life I had. You hear her so incredibly vulnerable on a song like "Don't Want to Break Up Again," how she falls asleep crying. You turn up the TV, like the volume on the TV, so he can drown out her crying. Like that hurts.
That's intense,
That's
isn't it?
brutal. Yeah.
You can't even
And
bear this own sound of you crying. Like,
yeah, your wife crying. It's crazy. So to transition a little bit into the music of the album, a series that I used to do on my TikTok, it was Best Worst Fave, where we go through an album. I would put it on my turntable and say what I thought the best song, the worst song, and my personal favorite song was on that album.
the
So,
amount of
Dan,
times I have shouted through my phone to you to be like, "What are you on about?"
stop. I know. Sometimes I watch them back and I'm like, wow, I was spot on. Other times I'm like, no, I was wrong. And you know what? That's the beautiful thing, is that your relationship with music changes, and that's okay. And everybody has an opinion. The difference is how well spoken that opinion can be with people on the internet. So, so best worst fave, Eternal Sunshine.
Okay. So I think the best, and like, I hate choosing singles, but I don't even care. I think "We Can't Be Friends," wait for your love in parentheses. I think it is the best song on the album. I think it's one of her best songs ever. Like, I genuinely, everything about it, I think is just like perfect. What's next?
Worst.
Can I like take the easy option and choose "Saturn Returns" interlude?
You can. You
I,
can.
I won't. Oh, this is really hard, isn't it?
It's very hard on an album
It's
that's
really...
this like it's. I mean, it's not short. It's 13 songs. That's like a normal album length, but it feels short because of the intro and the interlude. So you don't really have so much wiggle room, you know?
No, you don't. I would say maybe "Yes and," but also the song that I don't listen to as much as every other song is "Supernatural." I don't know why that is though. But
Interesting.
not like I hate giving singles. So in the interest of not giving a single, I will give "Supernatural."
Okay. And your favorite?
My favorite is so hard.
It's
I
so
thought
hard.
about this earlier and now I'm like, I think my favorite is "Don't Want to Break Up Again."
So underrated.
I feel like because the end of the album is so strong, the earlier songs get skipped over a little bit, but I just love that song so much.
It's funny you say that because listening to the album, I pretty much exclusively listen tracks 1 through 10, and I don't really return to the end of the album.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like my Spotify Wrapped this year. 4 of my 5 top songs were from this album, and I will give them to you in order. My number 1 most played song of the year, "The Boy Is Mine." Number 2, "Eternal Sunshine." Number 3, "Bye." Number 4, "We Can't Be Friends."
Yeah, see, "The Boy Is Mine" is great. It is, it's so good.
And then "Don't Want to Break Up Again" is number 8. So I'm with you.
Yeah, I think maybe because I always steer towards the kind of heartbreak, sad bop kind of songs.
I will say that my best worst fave overlapped on 1, and that is the best song being "We Can't Be Friends." I love "We Can't Be Friends." Like I said, it was one of my most streamed songs of the year. But because it sounds so similar to Robin's "Dancing on My Own," I have a very hard time saying that it's the best song on the album because I don't feel like an artist with Ariana Grande's abilities and talent should have the best song on her album be a song that is so identical to another existing song that is so widely loved. So I struggle with that. But trying to take the Robin context out of the equation, this song is stellar. She sounds so damn good on it. The EDM backbone of it is propulsive, but the contrast of these heartbreaking lyrics works so well. And it reminds me a lot of like how Dua Lipa loves to play in this dance crying space. I low-key love that kind of music. So I definitely gravitate towards this song a ton. I think the way that she's able to draw a parallel between We Can't Be Friends saying this to a former romantic interest and partner, and also drawing the parallel with the media and public perception and people who are coming for her based on certain narratives about this new relationship she's in. I love that duality. And I think the song is just so densely layered. And you hear the heartbreak in her voice when she's singing those early verses. The live performances were stellar on SNL, the acoustic one she did on Vivo. The music video of it, like we talked about already, it feels like a complete visual package, and it's so captivating to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And what I love is I love when you first listen to a song and you're so like entranced by the production and the beat and everything else that you literally, you bypass the lyrical meaning of it. And it's rare for me because the first thing I hear when I listen to anything is the words. So when I hear a song like We Can't Be Friends and I listen to it like the fourth time and I'm like, oh, this is actually sad. Like, it just doesn't register because you're having such a good time.
Right.
It's like dancing on your own. It's like dancing on your own. It's like when Callum Scott did it on Britain's Got Talent and he did the slowed down version. And you suddenly go, I get the song now, because you just can't quite get past that like dance, like rhythm. And We Can't Be Friends is like that. In like 5 years' time, someone's going to go on one of these talent shows, slow it down, do an acoustic version, have a number one hit, and it's going to be the same rinse and repeat. Like, I love it. I love a sad bop. Yeah. I love it when you're like, you can just vibe to the music, and then one day you realize what the song means, and it just like hits you, and you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be so happy listening to this.
Yeah. So 9th number one single, this song made her the artist with the most number one debuts in history, and it deserves it. It deserves it.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think it's crazy as well. Like sometimes you find yourself thinking about like big artists and you're like, but they're underrated. They're like, I know they're like one of the biggest pop stars on the planet, but you're like, they are actually underrated. With Ariana, people just see this like young pop girly who has this very distinct voice, who plays with her voice quite a lot as well. And people kind of don't get past that. You listen to her album and you see videos of her producing the album. You're like, oh my God, she literally has talents in every kind of area of music. But when people were kind of nervous and tentative about her being Glinda, and I had to tell people like, I've been a fan of Wicked since forever. I was like, Ariana Grande is going to be like exceptional at this. And like, until they see the film, they don't believe it because she has this like very distinct persona, I feel like, with the general public, but actually the level of talent and the level of professionalism and everything, it's just another level, isn't it?
It's off the charts. And I think people are finally starting to catch on because of how well received her performance in Wicked is right now. The part that I'm really paying attention to is how that translates into whenever she decides to return to music. I know she's kind of made it clear that music isn't the priority right now and she wants to continue diving down into acting. I just hope that some of the positive feedback and the relationship she's building with the general public will translate into whenever she decides to return to music. I realized I haven't given my worst to my fave still. My worst song pick on Eternal Sunshine, outside of the interlude, is Ordinary Things.
Oh, and really?
I hate saying it because it's so cute that her grandmother is on it, and it's a very nice and sweet song. I don't think the songwriting is anything stellar. I don't really like the way she pronounces the word Tokyo. It's such a nitpicky little thing. It just like struck a chord with me. Also, the songwriting is just where it lacks for me. But something that I really appreciated about it is the way that it plays into the bookends of intro, end of the world with this song. How on intro, very first thing she pretty much says on the record is, how do I know if I'm in the right relationship? And then in the very last moments of the album, her 98-year-old grandmother, Nona, gives her the answer. And it just really contributes to the story that is being told throughout the album. And to have someone who is so special to her I love that moment. So even though it's the worst song on the album to me, it's still special.
Yeah, no, I disagree very much. But
That's fair.
I just think I like the fact that the thing I like about it, I think, is because it's the album closer, but it still has that upbeat kind of feel to the beginning of it. So it's like you get to the end of the album and you're not closing on this downbeat kind of thing. It's still like, no, we're still going to party till the end. And then I also, another big music opinion, I hate it when people speak on songs like this one, but this is like such an exception. It's such an exception. And when she says at the end about, make sure you give your partner a kiss before you go to bed, and I'm like, that's advice I've had from my grandparent, literally the same advice. And I was like, it's just such a old-fashioned way of thinking. Like, no matter what's happened, no matter what, you don't ever go to bed on an argument, is what my nan used to say to me. And I just love that these kind of messages are still so important to people. And what a way to end the album.
Yeah, fair. You're making me rethink things. I don't have another answer, so I'm sticking with it.
It's really hard though, because it's such a good album. Like, how do you pick a worst of a good bunch? It's hard.
Right. My personal favorite song is The Boy Is Mine. Duh, based on like it being number one for Spotify Rap this year. I probably listened to this song over 400 times, I want to say. It takes a lot for me to deem a song pop perfection. There is a very exclusive list of songs that I feel like are in this category. One of Ariana's songs that is in it is Into You, which I think is one of the best pop songs of the last 2 decades. This song, to me, is everything that you need to be a killer pop song in one. You have this like trap pop infused production, which very much feels at home for Ariana. The biggest thing about this song that I cannot get over is how sexy it is. It is so charming and promiscuous and seductive, and tiny little details contribute to that. The biggest of which is the way that she spaces out the syllables, the boy is mine, before going into the chorus. The way that the production drops out and she's so slyly delivering it just adds into the mystique of the song for me. And once I heard it, and I could never let it go.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. Do you know what is going around in my head as you were talking about it? Ethan Slater.
I keep seeing it all over my For You page still, and it's like, he needed that.
It was so great. Good, though. That was such a good moment for him.
Well, the backstory to this song is almost as interesting as the song itself. This was a song that came to be because back in 2021, she was working on a song for, I think at the time, it was like a Seth MacFarlane scripted TV show. And she was working with Seth to create a song that played into the nostalgia of Y2K R&B girl groups. So she made Fantasize. It leaked on TikTok last year in 2023, and it went so beyond viral. She was so unhappy about it, she actually asked fans to stop spreading around the leak. But she was surprised by how much love and attention it got that she then created The Boy Is Mine in response to that, to play into that same pastiche and the same aesthetic choices and the same textures and sonic production. And I'm so glad, I guess, that this happened, because if the song had never leaked, who would have ever known if she'd gone down this lane?
It's crazy, isn't it?
A song that we haven't talked about yet that I do want to touch on is Imperfect for You. Yeah. I've seen a lot of people say that this is their favorite song on the album. She performed it on SNL. The most interesting thing about this song to me is the fact that it is literally called Imperfect for You. And listening to this song, you quite literally feel like something is imperfect in the actual music of it. It sounds like it's off tune when you hear that guitar come through. Did anything about that stand out to you when you first heard it? And what are your thoughts on the song?
I instantly loved it. And I think I instantly loved it because it was a little bit different.
Yeah.
And you know, when you've got an album that's so cohesive and succinct and short, and there's just one song that has a little bit of a difference about it, and you're like, this is good. And especially because it's near the end of the album, you're like, it's almost refreshing. Like you say, with the guitar in it as well, it's just a different instrument to the rest of the album. And yeah, like right. I immediately fell in love with it. And then you feel like, am I being tricked? Like, is it good or is it just different?
Yeah. That's something I think about a lot, because on an album like Brat or Hit Me Hard and Soft, which were seeing those artists play into more experimental sounds, you have I mean, Brat is so divisive because of that experimental sound. Hit Me Hard and Soft sees Billie in new territory she had never gone before. This is a experimental move to have music that is purposely off key almost, and I can't decide still if it's good or bad. I am excited to see that she's going into trying something new, but it's off-putting, and it's purposely off-putting. But is it off-putting enough that you can get behind it and support it, or is it off-putting enough that you're like, it sounds bad? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I think the placement on the album is probably the key. I think if it was like track 3 or 4, I think it'd been jarring to kind of start the album as it was and then be like, whoa,
Yeah.
what's going on here? But because it comes towards the end, I feel like you're ready for like a little bit of a mix-up.
Right. So we touched upon it a little bit before, but this album was kind of the big release of 2024 at first. It came out in March. This was such a busy year for music. There were new albums every single Friday, it felt like. And it seems like a lot of people forgot about Eternal Sunshine. And a lot of those people were critics because this album was left off a lot of these best of 2024 lists. It seems like the Recording Academy kind of forgot about it because she only walked away with 3 nominations, which was incredibly disappointing. Why do you think this happened?
I just don't know. I think, like you say, it was a very busy year. And also, it wasn't just a busy year for music, it was specifically a busy year for women in pop.
Yeah.
Because you had, and even they didn't all do pop, you had Beyonce that came out with Cowboy Carter. Then you had, obviously, Brat, and then Chapel Roan had this big kind of sudden evolution into what she's become. And Sabrina Carpenter suddenly released an album and everyone thought, oh my God, who is this woman? And I'm like, she's had quite a few albums before, but
yeah,
not like this.
5 of them, to be specific.
Crazy, isn't it? And you even had like Gracie Abrams, and just every side of women in pop has been crossed off. But Ariana was like at the very beginning of it, and you just think, has that had a detrimental impact on her just from the pure stance of marketing? And she had to release it earlier in the year because obviously she spent the second half of the year wicked promo, very heavy in that.
Non-stop, yeah.
It had to happen, but when it wasn't nominated for Album of the Year, it was like, to me, it was the bigger. I don't like the word snub because I feel like it's not necessarily that the Academy thinks it's bad and they're snubbing it because of any reason.
Yeah.
I just think it was like forgotten. But it's crazy to me because it was so good.
It's so good. And I also still have not been able to figure out what happened now a month and a half since these nominations came out. I don't know. I think where I was expecting to see nominations land, I was expecting to see We Can't Be Friends play into Song of the Year or Record of the Year. I was definitely expecting Eternal Sunshine in Album of the Year. And the fact that it walked away with just 3 nominations, those being Yes and for Best Dance Pop Recording, The Boy Is Mine remix with Brandy and Monica for a Best Pop Duo/Group, and then Eternal Sunshine for Best Pop Vocal Album. And I honestly don't think that she'll walk away with any of them. I think she's going to go for 3 this year. I think Best Dance Pop Recording is Charlie's. I think Best Pop Duo/Group is going to go to Charlie and Billie. And Pop Vocal could go to Sabrina, maybe? I don't know. That's a tough category this year. I just think that it's confusing with an album that was as well received as this album was. It has an 84 on Metacritic. It's the highest rated album of her entire discography other than Thank You Next. You have 2 #1 singles to it, Yes and We Can't Be Friends. And with Ariana being so ubiquitous right now because of Wicked, I almost thought that they would toss her something a little more to make sure she's there Grammy night for ratings and to play into the love that she's getting for her acting performances. It's a good opportunity if you're the Recording Academy and you're the network putting on the show, like, hey, she was ours first, Obviously she's been an actress all along, but I'm surprised from a marketing angle they didn't push it a little bit harder. I just also think, because that's just the Grammy side of it, but the critical perception of it, even though it had 2 #1 singles, Yes and did okay, did fine. We Can't Be Friends did a little bit better in my eyes. There just wasn't longevity here, and I think the biggest culprit is just how much music came out. I think when you have a release, like even Beyonce's Cowboy Carter, like it was huge the week that it came out, but then it kind of dropped out of conversation. You have the massive year of Taylor, but the real stars of 2024 in my eyes were Charlie, Sabrina, and Chapel. Ariana isn't the shiny new toy anymore. She's been around in the industry for over 10 years, and I feel like it's a lot harder for an artist that's more experienced to capture attention the way they used to. The thing with Ariana, though, that makes it so confusing is, she had the Save Your Tears remix with The Weeknd and Die For You with The Weeknd, and those did extraordinarily well. People aren't tired of Ariana. I just don't think they were looking for new music from her the same way that diehard fans were. It's very confusing. It's very weird.
As much as I want Eternal Sunshine to be an album of the year, I do not know what album I would take out.
Fair. This year's nominees are Brat by Charlie XCX, Cowboy Carter by Beyonce, Jessie Volume 4 by Jacob Collier, Hit Me Hard and Soft Billie Eilish, New Blue Sun, Andre 3000, The Rise and Fall by Midwest Princess, Chappell Roan, Short and Sweet, Sabrina Carpenter, and The Tortured Poets Department, Taylor Swift. I mean, I very much could take out Jacob Collier and Andre 3000, but that's just because I'm not as familiar with their music. I'm sure we're in the same boat.
Yeah.
Andre 3000 was...
That category this year could have been all women, and it would have been so just right. It would have been so correct.
Jessie Volume 4 was not nearly as well received as Volume 3. And then with Andre 3000's New Blue Sun, like, he's a legend. So that's a kind of in the way that the Beatles were nominated for Record of the Year. I think it was last year. It's kind of like a toss in a way. But as someone, who knows how strong Eternal Sunshine is, it's frustrating that it was left out. But I mean, I just hope that Ariana doesn't take these, in quotes, snubs and feels rejected by music and her peers, and now getting so much great press for Wicked and acting and all of this Oscar hype. I don't want her to feel like she's not welcomed in music anymore, because that's so not the case. There's so much room for her. There just is more pressure, and I hope that she doesn't stay away for long.
I don't think she will. I think a big thing might be this kind of afflicted vocal that she is so famous for, that kind of breathy, she has this powerful voice, but she almost kind of hides it behind these breathy pop kind of R&B tones.
Right.
Where, before Wicked, you knew that she could come out and give it a bit of Adele, give it a bit of Beyonce, and she would absolutely compete. And I wonder if this kind of her revelation as Glinda, with this incredible, operatic soprano tone and these big, huge songs, and the way that she's changed songs like Popular to be even more vocally impressive, bearing in mind she's not known as a Broadway performer, first and foremost. And I'm really intrigued to see if in 2026, 27, come out with some massive vocal album that is like her Celine moment. It's all coming back to me now. Let's have one of those kind of anthemic songs.
Totally.
I'd love it if she went in that direction and just stripped back this kind of Ariana Grande, kind of thing, and just went pure, absolute belt out 10 songs on an album. I'd love that if she did that.
I think you hit the nail on the head. That is exactly where I was thinking things should go, because take what you've learned from your experience as Glinda, all of the vocal training that went into it. I mean, she's finally enunciating on Eternal Sunshine. That was the biggest present to get, is you can actually understand what she's saying. So you already heard the impact of the Wicked experience on her music with Eternal Sunshine. Let's take it a step further. You're seeing all this incredible praise for those operatic notes in No One Mourns the Wicked, the key changes in Popular. It's chill-inducing. Let's have a nostalgia play. Let's go back to the 90s. Give us that Celine moment. Use her voice in more creative ways, where she's already done a fantastic job of this, of mastering vocal harmonies and stacking her vocals so that they sound like instruments. Use those operatic tones, pitch them down, or put some cool filter on it to make it sound like an instrument, where the entire song is actually her voice, and let her vocals do the storytelling. That is such a cool opportunity for her.
Piano ballad. Let's get Stephen Schwartz on the piano, Ariana Grande, just sing your heart out, love.
Let's do it. Well, Dan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I know it's late where you are. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. For anyone who wants to check out your socials, where can they find you?
I am at Dan Cascio on everything, I think. I grabbed it on it all.
That's nice.
But I know it's quite nice having the same. Well, because basically I used to be, when I started out, I was Yeeted Zombie. I don't know why.
What?
I don't know why. So for the first year and a half, I was Yeeted Zombie. My link
I'm
tree is
dead.
still Yeeted Zombie. One day I had to change it. So I opened every app and put in like so many usernames to try and get the same one across the apps. And then for some reason, I just put an IO on the end of my surname. And now everyone thinks I am actually called Dan Cascio. It's just Dan Cash.
People
But
think my
yeah,
real
so
name is Mars.
yeah, I just saved you on my phone as Alex Final Mars. I was like,
I love it. Yeah, my branding is across the board. Mars is always at the centerpiece, but a few different iterations. Thank you again so much. This was a really enjoyable conversation. I'm sure we will be seeing more of you on the podcast in the future.
listen, when Harry Styles releases another album,
Oh, you'll be here.
I'm here.
I will DM you and you will be here. No
I will
question
be,
about
yeah.
it. Awesome. Well, that is not only the end of this episode, but that is the end of the 5 favorite albums of 2024 miniseries. So this has been a really fun experience, and I will see you soon. Bye, guys.
Yeah.